This is the second part of the Patterson narrated PowerPoint, chapters 7 through 11. So we are talking about giving your opinion and the difficulties sometimes people have that are passive or aggressive. So Patterson provides some helpful tips for individuals who want to be able to express their opinion in an assertive way. First, the first two things, one, to be in a relaxed, be relaxed before you start giving your opinion. So if you're really fired up or upset or frustrated, this might not be the best time if you can take a few moments to relax first. And also, people think it's silly, but rehearsing what you want to say can be helpful. Now, obviously, when you're in the moment with a group of friends who are, expressing their opinion on something and you want to say something, you don't necessarily have the time to rehearse, but maybe it's a situation at work where you feel like you want to bring something up and express your opinion about something and it's uncomfortable for you to do that to your coworkers or your boss. Rehearsing that can be helpful. We also want to, for those that are passive and often communicate a lack of confidence, we want to practice not showing that lack of confidence. So having assertive nonverbals, using a confident voice tone, those things. But also for those that are overly aggressive, sometimes they don't allow other people to express their opinion. So you want to make sure that you signal openness to other people's views. You can say something like, you may feel differently on this issue, but this is how I see it, or this is how I feel. And that's, again, where owning your message and using those I statements can be really helpful. We also don't want to apologize for our opinion. And often people who are more passive especially will start off by saying, I'm sorry, but I think this. You don't have to apologize. You don't have to be sorry for that. That's what you think. That's what you feel. Also, recognizing that you're not the source of all truth is important. Again, this is people who are aggressive tend to think, my opinion's correct, everybody else is wrong. You have to think about it in the way I think about it. That's not correct. We know that there can be more than one way of seeing an issue. And so recognizing that you're not the source of all truth is important. We don't want to intimidate others. So again, if you have a tendency to be overly aggressive, be aware of the ways that you might be intimidating to someone else, again, through your nonverbals or the way that you express something. Also, before you justify your opinion, think about whether or not that's going to help you in the situation or not. Often, especially people who are more passive, they feel like they have to explain why they feel this way. And we talked about this last week. We don't need to justify ourselves to anyone else. And so it's okay for you to have your opinion. And if others don't agree or don't accept it, that's okay. The last one, don't let it slide. This is for people, again, who are more passive, who want to say something, who feel, they feel compelled to say something, to stand up for what they believe in, but they say, I'm just going to let it slide this time. When you're practicing being more assertive, don't let those things slide. Say something and practice stating your opinion on that. So this is one of the times in the book that Patterson asks us to stop and practice giving our opinion. So you'll see on page 102 through 104, he gives us a few exercises where we can practice stating our opinion on different issues. I encourage you to do that exercise with a friend. I also want you to think about a situation that you have coming up in the next week or so where you would like to be able to express yourself in a more assertive manner. So maybe it's at work, maybe with your significant other, maybe it's with a family member, a time when you've wanted to say something, but you have kind of held back for whatever reason. Think about what that situation is, what you would like to say, and how could you say it. Think now that you know some of these helpful tips that Patterson has provided. The next chapter is on giving on accepting positive feedback. The next 4 chapters talk about feedback. First, giving and receiving positive feedback, and then receiving and giving negative feedback, or what we call constructive feedback. It's interesting. All types of feedback are needed and helpful. We need feedback to know that we're either on the right track or we're not on the right track. So at work, we need someone to say, oh, great job, you did a really good job with that patient, to know, okay, yep, that's what they want me to do. Or in future situations, when you're administering meds, we need to do it this way. That feedback is helpful too, because now you know the correct way of doing something. If we never received feedback, we wouldn't know where our strengths and weaknesses are and what we needed to work on. So feedback is important. However, it's still uncomfortable at times. Negative feedback usually more so, but even positive feedback can be difficult for people to accept at times. For example, one of the most common ways that we get positive feedback is through compliments. So somebody says something, great job on your presentation today, or great job at clinical, or I really like that outfit that you're wearing, or whatever it might be. We get these compliments, and for some of us, especially people who are more passive, it's difficult for us to accept that compliment. So there's a number of ways that we deny that positive feedback, or we don't accept that positive feedback. First is ignoring it. Somebody says something to us and we just don't respond to it. Next is denial. Somebody says, great job on that presentation. You say, oh no, I did a horrible job. I did so bad. That goes along with that arguing with the person. No, that wasn't a good job. I'm like, no, you really did a great job. No, I didn't. I should have done this better, or whatever. Joking. And that goes along with self-insult. So instead of just saying, thank you, say, oh yeah, I guess I did a good job for, putting it together at the last minute, or something like that. Then there's questioning, like, why did you think I did a good job? Are you kidding me? That's another way that we can ignore that, or not accept that positive feedback. Another thing Patterson talks about is narrowing. So somebody gives us a compliment, like, great job on that presentation. And instead of just accepting the whole compliment, maybe we say, oh, yeah, I guess I did do a good job on, having good eye contact, and just accepting a little bit of a compliment. And then the boomerang, which I think is used the most often. That's when somebody gives us a compliment. Instead of saying thank you, we say, oh, no, you did a great job on your presentation. Or, oh, you look great today. Oh, no, you look great. Instead of accepting that, we just shoot a compliment right back to the person. So I want you to think about, after hearing these and reading them in the book, do you find yourself doing this? Do you find yourself ignoring these compliments? And if so, which of these ways do you use to not accept a compliment? So then the question is, why don't we accept compliments? And there's several reasons. First, I think some of us are taught as we grow up, that it's conceited to accept compliments, that by saying thank you, we're agreeing with the compliment, and then that shows that we think that we're so great, or that we think, we're wonderful, and that shows that we're conceited or arrogant. This is really unfortunate for a number of reasons. One, by accepting a compliment, that does not mean that you agree with it. It's just acknowledging that person's opinion. And two, if we do something well, it's okay to acknowledge that we do something well. It's not conceited to acknowledge our strengths. And that's something that we have to get over, I think. But I think there's a great scene in the movie Mean Girls from several years ago now, with Lindsay Lohan, where several of the mean girls in the movie are, giving her compliments. Oh, you're so pretty. And Lindsay Lohan responds and says, oh, thank you. And the mean girls say, oh, so you agree? And that the way that they say it comes off as showing that by accepting that compliment, they're thinking that Lindsay Lohan is conceited in that situation. And so I think that is very prominent in our culture, and it's something that we should work on, because assertive people acknowledge, one, we accept positive feedback, and two, we acknowledge our strengths in the things that we do well. Other times we don't accept compliments because we want to restore balance. If we hear something positive, then we have to counterbalance that with something negative. Again, that's a complete myth, but sometimes we want to balance out that karma. We think if too many good things happen to us, then something inevitably bad is going to happen. Sometimes it's that we fear that if I accept these compliments, then I'm going to be in debt to the other person. And again, that should not be the case. Just because somebody gives you a compliment doesn't mean that you owe them a compliment or owe them something in return. Some of it just comes from low self-image. That we don't feel good about ourselves, and we don't see those things as positives, and so we deny it or ignore it. And then sometimes we worry about what the motive is behind the compliment. Maybe we think they're just saying that to get something from us, and so we decide not to accept it because of that. The alternative is actually really easy. It just requires us to accept the compliment in whatever way that you feel is appropriate for you. So Patterson provides several different variations of thank you, but that's all we need to do. And by saying thank you, again, we're not agreeing with it, we're not being conceited, we're simply acknowledging the other person's perspective and their opinion. So now that we've talked about accepting positive feedback, we'll talk about giving feedback to others. It's important that we give feedback because, as I mentioned, it's how we learn new skills. It's how we know that we're on track. It's also an important part about relationships. If you're in a relationship with someone, they want to hear what you like about them, what their strengths are. If you're in a relationship where nobody's ever giving you positive feedback, you can start to resent that relationship. And so giving that feedback is really important. And we like to be around people that build us up. Sometimes the things that hold us back from giving that feedback is we're just too focused on the negative. We are focusing so much on the negative that we can't see the positive. Other times we have such high standards that nobody can meet it. Sometimes we just don't know what to say or how to give feedback, and that's what we're going to work on today. That fear of losing or widening the gap, that's just the sense that if I'm giving other people positive feedback, then they're going to be ahead of me and maybe they'll do better in the clinical, or they'll get a better score, or they'll get the job promotion, whatever it might be. And then for managers, sometimes they feel like I shouldn't have to give positive feedback. They should just do it without my support. I shouldn't have to tell somebody good job. They should just do it. That's what's expected of them. And even if it is an expectation, it doesn't hurt to say good job. It can just be the motivating factor that can help people continue to do well in their job. So Patterson gives some recommendations for how to give positive feedback. First, we want to refrain from false compliments. That's where we give a compliment just to give a compliment even though we don't really mean it. So great job on that presentation, even though you think they did really poorly and it was clear that they didn't do very well on it. Or the backhanded compliment. We'll talk a little bit about that in just a minute. Sometimes we use compliments to be manipulative, like, oh, you're so great at driving. Would you mind driving to the party? And that's just so that you don't have to use your car, use your gas. So we don't want to use it to be manipulative. And then we want it to be specific. Just saying good job is fine, but the more specific you can be, especially as a leader or manager in the workplace, like you did a really great job inserting that IV with that patient. That's more specific and more helpful. There's some practice, some ways to practice this on page 116. I also have just some homework that's not really homework, but things I want you to think about this week. I want you to focus on your nonverbals. What messages are you communicating with your nonverbals? And then practice accepting compliments. When somebody says something, just practice saying thank you and see how that feels. And then also giving compliments, especially with somebody that maybe you're having a difficult relationship with. Can you practice giving them one compliment a day? The last chapter here in chapter 7 through 11 is on receiving negative feedback. And I'm going to start a new PowerPoint. The last PowerPoint will just be going over this this section, and it'll be real short. So look for part 3.